All right, Chad. So thanks for doing this again. I know you're busy on a Monday morning. Another week goes by in the Breeders' Cup world as far as the Challenge Series was concerned, and we've got a lot of races to recap because we haven't done one of these Monday shows in a while. And the next two shows you're going to be doing back on Thursdays because we have some really big Breeders' Cup races coming up. So let's tell you what. Let's start with the Classic. And I've got three races and three horses to bring up here, and you let me know if there's anybody I'm missing. So we have the Stephen Foster, the Haskell, and the Whitney. We had Olympiad winning the Stephen Foster. That was his fifth straight win. Actually, at the time, it was his fifth straight win. Of course, lost to Life is Good in the Whitney. Then the Whitney, Life is Good, beating Olympiad. 8 out of 10 wins, lifetime for Life is Good. And Cyberknife, obviously, winning the Haskell. So would you say that Life is Good and Cyberknife are two of the favorites?
I mean, I'd like to say that. I think. Look,
no, we hope Cyberknife isn't a favorite, actually.
I think the thing in the Classic division now, I mean, the Haskell, and we'll add in a couple of weeks in the Travers, where, there's still 3-year-olds running against 3-year-olds. So, Cyberknife and Epicenter and Rich Strike, the Derby winner, and Zandon and all those horses, they've never had a run against older horses yet. So that's kind of the thing about the Breeders' Cup is now you have those younger horses who now have to step up and see where they stack up against the older horses in the generation. And that's what makes the Breeders' Cup Classic and Distaff so special. This is the first time you see the best horses of the 3-year-old generation running against the best horses of the older generation. Certainly Cyberknife with his track record performance in the Haskell, if he can grow off of that, he would certainly be a major player in the Classic. Life is Good did what he had to do. I think it was an important performance for him, kind of getting back on track around 2 turns after the disappointment from Dubai. And while the field he beat that day was okay, Hot Rod Charlie looks to maybe have lost a step or two. Doesn't look to be as quite as strong as he was earlier in the year or even last year. And Happy Saver always runs his race, but he was second best, and he kind of pales in comparison to some of the other better older horses. Obviously, when you talk about the Classic division, you have to talk about some of the other horses that the races that took place around the world. The winner of the Saudi Cup, Emblem Road, was announced earlier last week that he's going to come to try and run the Breeders' Cup Classic, and obviously the horse that won the Dubai World Cup as well for Bob Baffert, who came back and ran second in the San Diego last time. He'll run in the Pacific Classic and try and go to the Classic, and the mystery right now is the horse who everybody is proclaiming the Breeders' Cup winner, and that's Flightline, who's never gone further than a mile. He'll run in the Pacific Classic on September 3rd. It's a big race for him as he tries to stretch out that speed from a mile to a mile and a quarter, and see if he can do that. So, they had a pool that closed last week that was like a future pool. And Flightline closed actually as the predominant favorite. So right now, all things go through Flightline, despite the fact that he's never gone more than a mile in his life.
Yeah, Flightline. We're going to get to the mile in a bit. Flightline obviously winning the Met Mile at Belmont to secure the invitation to the Breeders' Cup. And that was a 5-horse field, but I guess it really doesn't matter. Flightline is a dominating horse. And that was actually Flightline's first race following the 6-month layoff and cruised to a victory, as you mentioned, over Happy Saver in that one. There's only 3 more big Classic prep races left. 2 are on September 3rd, the Pacific Classic at Del Mar and the Jockey Club Gold Cup at Saratoga. And then the last one is October 1st, the Awesome Again Stakes at Santa Anita. So do you have any idea at all who you think we might see? You think we'll see any good matchups in any of those races?
Well, Flightline certainly is the star of the show in the Pacific Classic, taking on a lot of the top older horses over there in California. I'd imagine Hot Rod Charlie, he normally needs a little bit more time between his races, but I think he's heading back towards California. So, could you see him show up in there, one more time? that's certainly a possibility. But the matchup really is Flightline versus Country Grammar, and seeing, Country Grammar is a horse that we know the further the better, and Flightline, that's the only question. We
Okay.
know how brilliant he is. It's, can he stay out a route of ground? And if he does,
Watch
and
out.
it sets the showdown with Life is Good, um, and both of them front runners, predominantly close to the pace. Do they hook up? Does it set up for a closer? Does Rich Strike all of a sudden come from last and shock the world?
Yeah.
There's so many interesting things that'll happen, and so the Pacific Classic certainly will be watching that race with great interest. And the Jockey Club Gold Cup was a great race. It always took place at Belmont. The last few years, the field size dwindled, so they decided to move it to Saratoga. It took the place of the Woodward. Uh, Olympiad's going to run back in there off his disappointing effort in the Whitney. You'll have horses like First Captain in there for the barn of Shug McGahee. You'll have Top Fletcher is going to be represented in that race as well with Dynamic One. It's kind of it's the B string horses. I think I don't think we're going to see the winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic come from the Jockey Club Gold Cup this year, but it's an important race for Olympiad because he was disappointing last time out in the Whitney, so he needs to get back on track to kind of show that he belongs in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Now, because the Awesome Again is so close to the Breeders' Cup, is that like the Lexington for the Kentucky Derby?
No, that's still a month away. That's still plenty of time.
So a month is still okay. All right.
Yeah, no, it's still quite a ways away. It's probably actually 5 weeks. So
Okay.
you're if you run in there.
All right, the distaff.
The Awesome Again, by the way, is probably where we see Taiba next. Taiba ran second to Cyberknife in the Haskell. There was talk of him, maybe in the Pennsylvania Derby. But I got a feeling that Bob Baffert might stay home and run him in the Awesome Again. It's certainly a possibility. It would be his first time taking on older horses.
Okay. The distaff, Clairiere, got the win in the Ogden Phipps. That was a 5-horse field in Belmont. Then a couple months later in the Clement L. Hirsch Stakes, which was just a week ago, Blue Stripe, the Argentinian horse, who actually raced in the distaff last year at the Breeders' Cup, finished 7th. So Blue Stripe is back. And then one more big race in the distaff, and that's the Judemont Spinster at Keeneland. Now, that's on October 9th. So what about this distaff field?
Well, look, the race of the year shaping up right now is going to be on the Travers undercard here at Saratoga, and that's called the Personal Ensign, and it's a grade 1, and it looks like right now we're seeing a matchup of Clairiere, Malathat, and Latruska. We're all scheduled to show up here, and that would be a heck of a show. Clairiere actually breezed this morning with Epicenter. Steve Asmussen's never been one that's afraid to work his good horses with each other. And they both looked really, really good this morning. I was impressed with what I saw from the team of Epicenter and Clairiere. And she's gotten better. She's not the biggest, most intimidating horse in the world. And Latruska in the race will probably help her because Latruska's speed. But Latruska dominated the Personal Ensign last year. She loves this track at Saratoga. So if she were to come up here and compete against Malathat and Clairiere, it should be a heck of a race on that Travers undercard. And again, this is also when you talk about 3-year-olds taking on olders, you start looking at a horse like Nest, who we're going to see this weekend running in the Alabama, and see where she competes and where she stacks up against the best of the older generation as well. So definitely looking forward to seeing Nest in the Alabama, and then she could very well parlay that into the Breeders' Cup distaff.
Yeah, because when you are returning a week from Thursday, that's when we preview several big races, including the Travers.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that. Okay, so that's the distaff. The mile, Count Again, winning the Shoemaker Mile at Santa Anita. That's 2 grade 1 wins this season for Count Again. Now, that's a closer, correct? Count Again's a closer.
Yeah.
Flightline, mentioned Flightline, winning the Met Mile. And how do you pronounce Bayed? Bayed? Bayed?
Yes.
Is it Eid or Ed?
Bayed.
Bayed. Okay, so undefeated now. Not only winning the Queen Anne but then just won a little bit after on the 27th of July to go 9-0 undefeated. The 4-star Dave, we could talk about that, of course, because Casa Creed pulled off the mini upset on Saturday. And that's, by the way, Casa Creed, of course, winning the Jaipur. That was the turf sprint at Belmont Park on the 11th, I believe, of June. So the question for Casa Creed is, because Casa Creed can get in either the mile or what's the other horse? Or the other race Casa Creed can get in? There's two races, right?
Turf sprint.
Yeah. So what do you think? Casa Creed.
So Casa Creed's hand is kind of forced here because the way the race is set up at Keeneland and where the Breeders' Cup is every year, it rotates every year, though it always seems to end up in the two locations. But at Keeneland, the turf sprint is only 5.5 furlongs. So Casa Creed is better going 6.5, which is the distance where it would be in other locations. 5.5 might be just a little bit too short for him. And, the race he ran on Saturday, showing up and coming from last with moderate fractions and just still having that strong late kick, I think it's going to lead the connections to probably lean that way. I would expect to see Casa Creed next in the Breeders' Cup Turf Mile, and I think he's there with a shot. I mean, we talked about it before. We talked about it before he ran in Dubai. We talked about it before he ran in the Jaipur. I mean, his 3/8 kick is electrifying, and it's going to be a fun race. I think it's a wide open race right now, and that race and the turf. When a horse like Bayed show up, or some of the other international horses, who comes from those countries is going to be the most interesting thing. Japan will be represented in that race as well, but I don't know that Bayed's going to come. Selfishly, as a fan, I'm rooting for him to come. I'd love to see him show up and run on the Breeders' Cup Marathon. But right now, gun to my head, I don't think he would come.
And why is that though? Because other horses are going to come, so why not Bayed? If is there a reason?
It's just not their main target. It's just not something that they need to do. Look, the horse is owned by Shadwell Stables, which forever was Sheikh Hamdan. Sheikh Hamdan unfortunately passed away last year. Sheikh Ahissa, his daughter, is now the one in charge, and she'll make those final decisions. And look, selfishly, again, would love to see this horse come to America and take on America's best and the world's best. But I can also see the horse coming back for one more year. They really enjoy the horse. He's a lovely, lovely animal, and we'll see. Look, he's got a few more races to go this year. I would imagine we'll see him in France again shortly, maybe in the beginning of October, and then the connections will sit down and make a plan if they decide that an American campaign, a race at Keeneland, which has played well to international horses in the past, is somewhere that they want to be and they want to try, and we'll respect their decision either way. But you certainly would love to see the horse run here in America.
I believe there's only two more big races for the mile. That's the Woodbine Mile at Woodbine and the Coolmore Turf Mile at Keeneland, which is on October 8th. Okay, the sprint. We've got the Princess Rooney winner, Cece, and Cece, who actually won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint at Del Mar last year, the champion female sprinter of 2021. Then you've got the Bing Crosby winner, American Theorem, who basically did nothing until the last two races. Not only wins those two races, including the Bing Crosby, but also put up back-to-back solid showings as far as the sheet numbers for the first time. And that's it so far for the sprint. We've got the Ballerina coming up. That's going to be on the 28th, which is a Sunday. And then you've got three races in October, the Vosburg, the Phoenix, and the Thoroughbred Club of America. So what about the sprint field?
I mean, it starts and ends with Jackie Warrior. I mean, Jackie's Warrior is the fastest horse in the country. He showed it again in Saratoga the other day, winning the A.G. Vanderbilt. He goes to the Forgo next, which is also on the Travers undercard. Sounds like it's going to be an interesting race. It should be some solid prospects in there, but Jackie's a very, very special horse from a trainer in Steve Asterson, the all-time winningest trainer in the history of horse racing. certainly knows how to get one ready for the big day. So it'll be tough to beat Jackie. I think it starts and ends with Jackie, and then everybody else right now is running for second.
Do you think we'll see Jackie at least one more time? Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, he'll run. He'll run on the. He's supposed to run on the undercard of the Travers on August 27th.
Okay. And then the turf, State of Rest, winning the Prince of Wales. You've got Sword, and then that's it. So we don't have much on the turf. We've got the Sword Dancer coming up in a couple of weeks, next week actually, and then we've got the Del Mar Handicap and the Calumet Turf Cup at Kentucky Downs in early September.
Yeah, State of Rest came back and ran yesterday in France. Was actually a little bit disappointment. Just ran fifth and was a little flat in the race. Maybe a little short for him. That race was only a mile. He's probably better around kind of a longer term. But State of Rest isn't going to come. State of Rest, connections have said, is going to point for the Cox Plate in Australia.
Okay.
So that would be their kind of long-term plan. It'll be interesting to see. Godolphin has kept Nation's Pride here. He's just a 3-year-old. He won the Saratoga Invitational last weekend, as John and I correctly predicted on the Patreon page of our picks. He's going to stay here. He's going to run in the next race at Aqueduct. And it'll be interesting to see if he stays here for one more race and tries to go to the Breeders' Cup turf against the older horses. But this is a division, again, that I think is kind of wide open. There hasn't been a strong American presence in these 1.5-mile races. We might see Colonel Liam, who won the Pegasus Turf. He had a little bit of a minor throat operation following the race in Dubai. Maybe he'll come back. I'm not sure he'll have enough time to make it to the Breeders' Cup. So this is another race that probably goes through international waters, and I think the Japanese will be represented strongly in this race, and I think this race is probably going to go through Japan, if what I'm hearing is correct. And they might bring 3 or 4 horses for this race this year.
Now, those are the top 5 Breeders' Cup races that we said a few months ago when we started this that we were going to center on, because we don't have time to talk about them all. But also just keep in mind the turf sprint, that's Casa Creed, so that's why we mentioned that. And also, by the way, the Riddler is in the turf sprint. Do you think is the Riddler coming over that 50-1 long shot?
We will see. We will see.
Is it any different when American horses travel to like Dubai? Anytime you see these American horses traveling to Dubai, you can see a great horse and it just doesn't have it. And you're saying, well, obviously it's got to be the travel and all that other stuff. But then you got all these other top horses that import, say, from England or international horses, and they come here. You mentioned Japan, and that doesn't seem to bother them as much. Is that because it's Dubai, or is that just because maybe the tracks are better here, or they're different? Why does it seem like it's more difficult for us to go there than them to come here?
My honest opinion?
Yes, absolutely.
The international trainers are a lot better at preparing international travel than we are. We are very much kind of a monotonous group of trainers. We train very similarly, and we don't do things to prepare the horses to travel like these other operations and outfits. And look, almost all of the international horses, no matter what country they're from, they train at a private yard or private facility where they're traveling everywhere they go. Where for us, 90% of the time we're running out of our own stall, and the other 10%, we're leaving the day of or a few days before for a short trip, an hour and a half. Every now and again, you'll see a little bit of California to New York to California, but for the most part, we don't travel that much. So we're just not prepared to handle that travel schedule. And there are certain things I feel like you have to do to prepare your horse to travel well and ship well. And I remember personally speaking, when I went to Dubai, I spoke to everybody I possibly could have on what they did right, what they felt like they did wrong. I spoke to people from the USA. I talked to people internationally, and you try and learn things that work and don't work. And, sometimes it's a trial by error. If you see, for example, Wesley Ward has had so much success shipping from America and running in Royal Ascot, where other than, I think Mark Cassidy won once with Tepin. Otherwise, I don't think we've ever had another American winner at Ascot. So, it's not like Wesley's the only one with the roadmap, but he knows what it takes and how to prepare one to go over there. And it's the same vice versa. It took a while. The Japanese didn't have a lot of success running in international racing. They tried for a long time. And it started coming in drips and drabs. And finally, now the last couple of years, they really seem like they figured out the formula, and it's worked well for them. They dominated the Breeders' Cup. They won 4 races in Saudi Arabia. They won 4.5 races because they dead heated for the win in Dubai. So they're a country that certainly figured out, how to travel and go as a team. And, you look here, for example, and I'm sorry for running on here, but I think this is an important point. Charlie Appleby and Godolphin, who won both legs of the 3-year-old races last weekend. Look, they have 2 horses here, and they have about 7 people on staff for the 2 horses. So it's not something to where you take it lightly. Whereas in America, a lot of times when we ship to Dubai, we'll send one person with them and just kind of hope for the best. And, I know when we went over there, the 2 years that I went over there, I took an entire team with me. I think there was, 6 or 7 guys with me and girls with me over there on that trip. And I think you want to make it as much of a feeling of being home as you can, and have them acclimate to that. And if you do that, I think it goes a long way. And I feel like a lot of times American trainers just think that we're better than the other horses and we don't need to do anything. And it's just a bad attitude to have.
So just having more hands-on attention to your horse is probably the biggest.
I think so.
Okay.
And listen, the number one thing is making sure they're well hydrated. You have to make sure they're well hydrated. You have to make sure they're drinking well before you leave. You have to make sure they're drinking on the plane, and make sure when they get to wherever the destination is that they're drinking. It's so important to keep them hydrated at all times, because they are going to. You don't want them to get dehydrated before the biggest race of their lives.
Is that something some trainers, when they travel overseas, fail to do?
I think they don't think about it. Think about it. It's a big deal.
Interesting. Definitely sounds like something that we could talk more about another time, but a good starting point. And remember, Chad is going to be back a week from Thursday with John and I when we preview the Travers, and all other races, by the way, include the Sword Dancer at Saratoga, the Ballerina at Saratoga. Got the Travers there as well. So we're going to have some great racing to talk about a week from Thursday. John and I will be back on Thursday, by the way. And then the following Thursday is the Pacific Classic at Del Mar, the Jockey Club at Saratoga, and the Del Mar Handicap. So you're going to be with us the next 2 Thursdays, and for good reason, Chad. So thanks for doing this again to get us caught up on the Breeders' Cup. And it sounds like you're a little bit under the weather, which is not a surprise since you only seem to get about 3 hours sleep. So somebody, if anybody needs some more, more liquids and electrolytes, it sounds like it's you.
Yeah, no, Saratoga, they'll do it to you. That's for sure. But I appreciate it, Greg, and look forward to seeing you next Thursday.